Welcome back to Just 15 Minutes. My name is Eric Bomyea, and today I'm joined by Kyle Lacy, the CMO at Docebo. Welcome, Kyle.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, so before we dive into our conversation, I'm wondering if you'll join me for a brief drop-in practice.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll do three breaths. The breath that we'll do is that we're going to invite the breath in through the nose, past the throat, into the chest, and expand the belly. And then we'll release the breath from the belly, the chest, and then out through the nose. So, and this can be done eyes closed, gaze lowered, or eyes open, doesn't matter. There's no right or wrong. So we'll begin in through the nose, fill up the chest, fill up the belly, and release belly, then chest, and out through the nose. Two more like that. In through the nose, past the throat, into the chest, into the belly, push out the belly, and out. Last one. In through the nose, past the throat, through the chest, into the belly, and then release.
I feel different, Eric.
You're
That was great. Thank you.
very welcome. All right, so let's dive into it. You shared a quote the other day that I'd like to read back and just have a conversation around it. There's a real cost of entry to leadership. We absorb the emotions around us. We ride the roller coaster with others while quietly managing our own. It's complex, it's demanding, and it's not easy at all. And I love this quote. And I would really love to
Thanks.
learn a little bit more about a recent time where you felt you were on that emotional roller coaster of leadership. And if you could invite us into that experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think I deal with it weekly, which is probably more of a issue with myself than it is anything else. But a recent example would be the marketing team at Docebo rolled out three major projects over a 3-week period. Now, the management of that and the building of that was 6 months. I mean, give or take 6 months across all three projects. But that 3-week stint in last month in January was pretty emotional and pretty aggressive. And as a leader, you have to absorb all the feedback and anxiety and also the flip side of that, the positive aspects of launching something and doing it well with your team, but you also have to manage all of the feedback from your external audiences. And I think it's a very unique position for people on executive team or senior leadership roles because most of the time a manager or director isn't receiving a ton of feedback from a ton of different sources. It's usually just their stakeholders. And for me, it was how do I make sure I'm balancing my energy appropriately, managing my team's feedback appropriately, as well as all the inputs from the rest of our exec team, the board, outside influencers, because there's always those handful of people, right? Um, but I think it's the combination of a lot of things happening at once and being able to make sure the team is still pushing hard to get it done, but also not completely burning themselves out.
That's a lot of work to be managing in a very short amount of time. Three
Yeah.
major projects going live in a large organization. That is a lot of moving pieces. It's a lot of energy circulating around.
Mhm.
And so I can understand how that would mountain pressure, especially for leadership, to be like, okay, I'm helping the team, I'm managing the team, I'm also receiving their energy. They're, trying to get it across the finish line. They're feeling the pressure it's building. So I'm receiving that. Well, I'm also receiving things from the outside, from the other executives or from other management to shape or influence these projects. And so in those moments, when there is so much coming in towards your energetic field, how are you managing that? And how are you able to understand your capacity?
Oh man, I can answer the first part of that. I don't think I can answer the second part of it. So the first part of it, I try as much as possible to there's really three things. Number one is regular exercise. Number one. I mean, that's like, I have to. Number two is decent sleep, right? And maybe there's not even three. Maybe those are the only two. Maybe the third is like just I managed to remove myself from work for at least the evenings and sometimes on the weekends to kind of help balance. Most of the time I work on the weekends, but evenings for sure with my family. So those are probably the three. But your second part of your question, I have no idea. I have all that. My only reference is like my Whoop band where it tells me like I need to take a break. That's my only reference.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I think there's also something in it that it's like you've learned over time to compartmentalize, to set that boundary, to say, I need to take space from work to be with my family.
Hmm.
And so I'm curious, like, when did that start happening?
I think I was forced into it with having kids.
Yeah.
I think my wife would probably agree with me that I've never been good at it, and I'm still not great at it. But I think the as the egotistical self is put into check with children, and there's tons of different versions of this, right? It doesn't have to be kids; it could be a lot of different things.
Absolutely.
Um, I definitely had to check myself because a lot. I mean, I've talked about this before, but a lot of my self worth, actually, still a lot of my self worth is in my job. There's a lot of net positives for me when it comes to that, as long as I'm managing those mental expectations appropriately with myself. But for me, it was kids, like making sure that I wasn't looking back 20 years from now regretting, and I still do.
Yeah.
Still regret it every day, but
Yeah.
I balance it appropriately.
Yeah, and it's a perspective shift, and it's being able to have the context to realize like what is important. And there is nothing wrong with saying work is important.
Right.
Work is important. It can give us purpose. It can give us a fulfillment. It can give us that drive to go through our days.
Yeah.
And that sense of accomplishment is great. And it's it's working with that, in my opinion, it's working with that, like you referenced, being conscious of it, being aware of it, of the pattern that's at play, and saying, like, how far down this do I want to go? And at what point is it going to be more detrimental, i.e., lack of time with my kids or missing out on that thing, to its potential to help me out in the long run?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm. And so going back to being in that team environment and the emotional energy exchange that's happening, do you notice anything in your body when you're working with somebody one on one, or if you're in a meeting with the team and the energy is high, the emotions are high? Do you notice something in your body when that's happening?
I don't, it's, you know what? I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky that in terms of just physical aspects of stress, my heart rate doesn't ever really get up that high, honestly. Like I've learned that through Whoop and having too much data about my body. But I would think that like mentally, it's more of like I have to solve the problem immediately. That's immediately where my head goes. It's like, let's solve it, let's make a decision, let's move forward. And that works 95% of the time in professional environments. It works about 15% of the time in personal relationships.
Totally.
So I think I don't know. I think it's also important to note that we talk a lot about work stress and personal stress, and life stress plays a huge role, even if you have three projects hitting. Like you have team members going through a lot. You might be going through a lot, and you need to make sure that you keep that in mind as you're working through all this, because we're all just trying to figure it out together.
Absolutely. And most everyone is trying to do their best every day.
Mhm.
And so that moment about the heart rate, like that data that your heart rate stays low. I mean, I think this is the importance of a regular physical practice.
Yes,
It's
absolutely.
it's endurance building. It is a capacity builder, so
Yep.
that as the body experiences stress, whether that is through physical exertion or emotional, we have tools and a trained organ that can handle
Yep.
that stress.
Yep. Because it doesn't know. It doesn't know if I'm, I mean, it might. Who knows? I
Yeah.
guess I don't know in my heart, exactly. But you know, it doesn't know whether I'm stressed out about a board meeting or whether I'm sprinting, other than my heart rate's higher and my respiratory rate's higher and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that I agree with you. It has a lot to do with it.
Yeah. It doesn't. I mean, fight or flight, right? Like
Yep.
that tiger can be a real tiger, or that tiger can be in here.
Yep. And most of the time it's in here nowadays, right?
Absolutely. And so prioritizing physical health and decent sleep. If there is
Yeah.
somebody listening, watching this that is having a hard time finding the time to tend to themselves in that way, what advice, recommendation, or story would you tell them about your own practice in prioritizing your physical health and your sleep?
Oh man. I mean, if you're finding if you're finding it hard to get out and like exercise, I would start with just walking. I didn't do this, but if I were in somebody else's shoes and I didn't have the way to prioritize it, I would just start small. And if you had one or two meetings a day that you could take walking, or get a treadmill thing that you put under your desk. I don't even know, walking pad, I think is what it's called. For me personally, I had to find an exercise routine that I could stick to, and that's why gyms like Orange Theory were very important, because they charge you a late fee if you don't make it to the session. So
Consequences can be very helpful.
yes, so I would do either start small or get something on the calendar that's 3 or 4 times a week that you have to do.
Yeah.
That's what
And the
helped for me.
and the accountability to it, whether it's yourself or somebody else. In Orange
Yeah,
Theory's
I
case, they're
never. Yeah, they base it, and that's what made them so successful for sure. But for
Mhm.
me, it is. I never had an exercise routine until I started doing that, and I think I'm on class like 685.
Amazing.
So that's what I would do.
Yeah, congratulations on that.
Okay,
And
thanks.
then any advice to any leader who is on the roller coaster right now, where they're really feeling the demand and that leadership has been a real cost to entry here?
Other than listen to this podcast,
Yeah, yeah.
right? No, I think in general it's never going to end. So if you can't figure out how to manage the head trash as well as your physical well-being, you need to find a new job, because it doesn't change. And it's why I love it, and it's why a lot of people hate it. So I don't have any other advice other than that. You better check yourself if you can't figure it out, because
I
you'll
agree.
you'll it will hurt you in the long run.
Absolutely. Building up the stamina, building up your capacity to be in those environments will
Yep,
help to an extent. If that environment is swallowing you up, then yes, it's time to exit. And that is a big
yep,
part of this podcast, is really giving people tools so that they can regulate themselves in situations they may not always be able to control.
yep,
And so, whether that is 3 breaths before your next meeting, or if you're in the middle of a hard conversation, taking a pause and looking inward to say, how can I regulate a little bit? How can I come down a little bit?
yep,
And if I'm finding myself always spiked, always triggered, then what can I do in my daily life to develop more resiliency? Or do I need to exit?
yeah. For me, that's a great advice. And as long as you can figure that out, I think my next step is I got to cut caffeine. Outside of that, I think I'm okay.
Yeah. I've switched over to 1 cup a day and then decaf for the
Oh, I
rest.
can't. Well, I'm sitting here talking to you, drinking a venti, and it's like my second of the day. So we'll leave that there.
Well, I'll text you anytime if you need an accountability partner on the caffeine. So,
Well, I know. Thanks, Eric. I appreciate
all
it.
right. All right. Well, we'll close out this space together. It is with deep appreciation and gratitude that I thank you for your time. I thank all the teachers, guides, and mentors that came before us that led us to this moment. And I hope that our presence and our practices can ripple out to impact others. Thank you.
Thank you.